Okay.
Yeah, and we are live. Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
What's up, Charles? I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm great. So, how did the day go?
Well, my day went really, really bad at first because I was supposed to go shooting with a friend of mine, and I woke up late and I wasn't able to go, so I was a little bit bummed out. And so to make myself feel better, I went out and bought a bunch of stuff.
Isn't that you went to buy a bunch of stuff? Isn't that what women do? I mean, buy
I
stuff.
think I think everybody feels better when they buy new stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I never
I
felt
mean,
that way.
don't
I
don't,
never
don't you
felt
feel
that
good
way.
when you go buy new stuff?
No, not particularly.
No, get a new car. It doesn't make
Not.
you happy.
Nah, nah. Maybe I'm just weird. Probably I'm the exception to the rule.
Yeah, I'm not really a materialist, but I think more or less it's a sense of feeling like you're actually getting something done. I think that's the reason why I enjoy it. I don't just go out and frivolously buy things. I don't. That's not the kind of guy I am. So most of the stuff is just like stuff like I had to buy a new laptop and a few other things, and so it makes me feel better that I got that stuff done. So. Ah. We got anybody else coming back in?
Okay, okay. Well, that's good. As long as you feel good, as long as you're better, as long as you're happy, well, it's good for me. So let's jump right into the
Okay.
yeah. But I'm going to chat with you for 30 minutes first before I let any other person in. So
Okay.
today we're talking about men's rights activism.
Yeah.
So I got introduced somewhat a few years back when the red pill and all that was making a lot of waves. I was watching a lot of content in the men's rights activists and all that. But I sort of drifted away from it, so I may not have a full picture of what exactly that movement is about. So if you may, could you just tell me what exactly is the men's rights activists? What is it about? What does it entail? What are its philosophies? What are its goals? And what are its modus operandi?
So from my particular position, it's a matter of bringing light to men's issues that need to be addressed, that definitely not only affect men but society in general. So you have, for example, men have an absolutely astounding suicide rate. Like we are completing suicide at rate. Sorry, we're completing suicide at 4 times the rate of anybody else. And we had a 13-year-old boy just commit suicide at my son's school 2 weeks ago. My friend killed himself about 3 years ago. There's a lot of suicide going on in I guess you would say the manosphere. I don't really like that term, but and bringing attention to the fact that so I'm not going to get into that yet, but the modus operandi is really is are there things that we're overlooking that are specifically men's issues that need to be addressed because it actually trickles down and affects the rest of society. So a lot of the times you'll hear the argument that women are the victims of rape and sexual assault, which is absolutely true. Um, there's the argument that women suffer in particular ways, and I'm not going to deny any of that. But the overall arching response you get is, well, let's say if you ask a series of questions, which is who are the main perpetrators of violence on women? It's men. Who are the main perpetrators of violence on men? Men. Who generally, as far as I know, overwhelmingly are child molesters, they're men. So you have one common thread between all of these people, and it's men. Yet we spend significantly less on medical research, mental health care. We have, I think it was a ridiculously low number of um, uh, men's shelters. We don't really encourage men to express their feelings. We don't encourage them to speak up when they're depressed. We're just expected to soldier on, move on, you know. But out of all these things, the one thread that remains is that the problem is men. Um, we need help. We need better mental health care. We just we need a lot of things that really do affect the rest of society in serious, serious ways. And when we ignore that, it's almost like we're ignoring the cause of the problem and just expecting the problem to go away because we're complaining about how violent men are.
Okay. I wanted to follow up on some of the things you said. You
Yeah.
mentioned that women are, or men are the perpetrators of violence against women, against other men, and against children. And you sort of wanted to tie it to the fact that men's mental health are not being taken into cognizance, or they're not being recognized, or there's no serious efforts to actually take care of men's
Yeah.
mental health. So I want to ask, those few things I just highlighted, are they a question of mental health, or are they a question of criminal behavior? I mean, if someone goes out to rape a woman, someone goes out to abuse a child, someone goes out to physically assault another man, are those issues of mental health, or just plain criminal behavior?
Well, I think they're kind of one and the same. Um, a mentally healthy person who is happy doesn't do those things. Um, you know, being able to have outlets in which we can speak to each other and
Mental health.
men's support group. Sorry, I'm sorry, Charles. I didn't hear you. Charles, I'm not hearing you, man.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I can't hear you really well. I think you're cutting out a little bit, but um, hurt people hurt people. And we've heard that saying a lot. And when men are hurt and we're not helping them get better, um, I mean, we can complain about the results all day long, but we're not really solving the problem. So, I've got friends who have lost children, and they still don't feel like they can talk about it. And if they do talk about it, they want to talk about it with other men that can understand men's psychology and the certain what seems to be a common socialization of men. And so, yeah, we need help. I myself, I began talking to a therapist recently, and I'm dealing with some things that I've been through in my life that were pretty hard and pretty raw, and it seems to be helping. So I've noticed a significant change in my behavior. I've noticed that I'm frustrated less. Um, I have a phenomenal wife who listens to me and helps me work through my issues, and I've got a very supportive structure around me of men that agree with me that we need to help each other. And the best result is that men stop hurting other people. That's the goal, right? Is to have a healthy society of individuals. And I don't want to genderize it, because everybody needs help. But when we have a problem with men harming other people at ridiculous rates, we need to address the root of the problem, which is men's mental health.
Okay, so I still want to take you to task on that particular point. I mean,
Absolutely.
do you mean to say that men's criminal behavior is somewhat tied to their mental health? That better
Absolutely.
mental health for men is going to reduce these criminal tendencies in men?
I'm not a professional, and so I'm not going to boast as though I'm a mental health professional. But what I have noticed is that when men are supported and they're heard, they definitely do commit less crime. They hurt less people. Um, you know, Something Warren Farrell once said is nobody ever goes into a divorce attorney and says, I want a divorce. My partner's listening to me. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
when we hear each other speak and we acknowledge each other's, complaints, their miseries, their feelings, magical things happen. And I've been part of groups where men have discussed their issues, and I'm starting a men's support group here pretty soon. And if I just got disconnected or not. But yeah, I've been in
Um,
situations where a bunch of guys got into a discussion, and we had really raw feelings being addressed. Um, I sat in a room with three other men, and I asked them the question, "How many of you have put a gun in your mouth in the last year?" And three-quarters of the people said they did. Three-quarters of the men said they had attempted to commit suicide that year, and I was one of them.
wow. Okay. Now, so I want to sort of, draw a distinction between two things. I want to draw a distinction between the criminal behavior by men that is caused by frustration from not having an outlet, of not being of having a supportive environment, of not
Mm-hmm.
being in a place where they are heard, where they feel they matter, and and just plain criminal behavior by otherwise fully functional, healthy people or healthy males in society. I think there should be a distinction between those. And I want to believe that the proportion of crimes committed by men as a result of frustration and all that may be in the minority compared to that which is caused by other criminal behavior elements, which I simply have no sympathy for. I mean, if a criminal is a criminal and they go out to hurt people, I have no sympathy for them. But
Mm-hmm.
if those issues stem from from um, mental health, if they stem from not having fully functional family, okay, I think those should be addressed. I believe they should be addressed. Yes, and I as a man, I can understand the position that you've been in. I can understand because a lot of times, either by socialization or by biology or a combination of both, men are sort of repressive. They just and maybe because the kind of language that men speak when they want to deal with their issues is not something that is easily understood, maybe by the people around them. So they just get to sort of cover up how they're truly feeling. And if they do not have other men that they can talk to, it can be very, very overwhelming. So I think that it's a good thing that um, we have a sort of an avenue for issues affecting men to be addressed, because when you look at how men are being treated maybe in divorce courts or in terms of child in the divorce having to uh, who gets custody of the child and so many other things, you just see it to be unfair, and men just seem to be taking it in great strides, but they are actually not taking in great strides because they're repressing these feelings, and these things have to come out somehow, and they might come out in a way that is not healthy, because the principal way that men show their emotions is by physical violence or by physical means. So it might not be a very good thing if these men are not being heard.
Right. So, I don't want to lump in large groups of people into an easily dissectable, body, but the broad range of men and their feelings, it's incalculable. But so I don't know how to put it. I guess I'm trying to find a way that I can discuss this in a way that's fair to everybody. But what we do know is that when men have access to an available, healthy, respectful circle of supporters and family and friends, they commit crime less. Now, I can't remember where the study was, and I'll find it and I can try and send it to you. But we know for a fact that when people have healthy support systems and proper mental health care, they commit crimes at significantly lower rates. We know that when they are more successful in business and life, they commit crimes less. So a lot of crime could be argued as kind of screams for help, trying to regain their own personal power. And the problem is, as I see it, is the dialogue is all wrong. When we're talking about certain things like sexual assault, it's not men inflicting their power on others. It's men trying to regain power. Now, this is arguable, obviously, but the general consensus in most MRA circles is that, and Warren Farrell has written about this extensively. Much of it was in the book, The Myth of Male Power, The Boy Crisis. Numerous of his books, he discusses this. When men hurt, it's because we're trying to reclaim power that we've lost. That comes in the form that comes from not being heard, that comes from not being listened to, that comes from people constantly telling us we're horrible, evil, despicable, violent beings that have no place on this planet. And there's no underabundance of tweets out there or commentary that COVID's not killing men fast enough. And it's I find that sickening, and I find that sad, and I really I kind of get a little bit teary-eyed when I think about how bad people are just willing to lump all men into one group of violent criminals, and I refuse that. I don't support it at all. The depth of emotion that I've experienced with other men, I know for a fact is, these things that they say aren't true, in the sense that men have feelings. We just don't express them. We don't have avenues to express them. When you take into consideration that the suicide rate for men, when they get divorced and when they lose their wife to death, so they're a widower, they commit suicide at 10 times the rate of everybody else, and it's consistent. So you can't equate that to men not feeling. Men feel deeply. We just don't know how to express it because we're not given the environment to do so. We're socialized from birth to shut up, stop crying, get up, move on, keep soldiering on. Don't talk about your feelings. Nobody wants to hear about them. We're unpaid bodyguards in the sense that we're expected to protect, everybody. We protect our country, we protect our family, we protect our children, and that's what we're expected to do. We're expected to die. Something that someone once said was that, history books are 500-page books on, toxic masculinity. And Warren Farrell's, and myself included in this, our reply is, no, those are 500-page books on male performativity. That's how we're taught that we should see our world, is that we are to die for glory. And, that's something that significantly needs to change. It needs to be addressed, and we need to give men voices to talk about their feelings.
Okay. Now, I find this, this socialization of men into being the providers, into being willing to give your life, into being, almost having a thankless job and all that in society. I find it to be almost universal because in almost every culture that I've sort of interacted with, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Isn't there more to it than it just being a form of socialization? Is there some benefits, some natural biological evolutionary benefits for men to have evolved to behave in that manner?
Well, I am by no means an evolutionary biologist, so I couldn't answer that with an affirmative, but I can tell you that that is somewhat what it seems like is happening. Is that so? There's this assumption that we've got two stages of life in human history. We have stage one, which is to survive. Stage two is now we're moving into love and feelings and expression, right? Well, the problem is men are still stuck in stage one relationships in their head, and women have been able to move on to more need-based relationships. So if you look at violence, violence has gone down considerably over time. We're still a violent society. Nobody's ignoring that. But our infant mortality rates are down. Um, Death by various diseases are down in comparable to in the past. In 1890, the women and men lived approximately the same amount of time. I think men died about 6 months earlier than women in 1890, and now you have an age gap of almost 8 years. So men are dying 8 years earlier. There's been some studies that have confirmed that men's testosterone is dropping significantly. Young men who are the age of 25 have the testosterone of someone who was 50 in 2000. That's ridiculous. There's also been studies done on men's telomeres, which are the little ends of the DNA that kind of dictate how often that DNA sequence gets to be replicated before it starts to break apart. And those are approximately 50% less than they were even 40 years ago. So not only are men, they're almost biologically designed to die earlier and earlier and earlier as time goes by, but we're not having children at the same rate either. And you can evidence this by men opting out of marriage. They're opting out of dating. They don't want to. So in some aspects, biology probably does have something to do with it, but for the most part, throughout all human history, it was man's responsibility to protect wife and children and property.
So, well,
We were
basically,
expected to die for that. What were you saying, Charles?
so basically screwed by both by our biology and by yeah, I say so. We are screwed by biology and by culture, by society, by socializations and all that.
Well, I don't want to say
All
we're
these things
screwed.
are sort of working in tandem to somehow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't want to say we're screwed.
Okay.
And
Now,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go
okay.
ahead.
So, something I no problem. Something else I picked up from your from what you were saying was that the demonization of men, that you hear all the time. It's sort of a uniquely Western phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you still find errant male behavior in societies where the men are still at the top, where there is no struggle for sort of a male identity. There is no question of their masculinity. You understand? So
Yeah.
how is that a factor where in societies that you don't have that factor, you still see these same kinds of male pattern behavior?
So I don't I don't live in a hyper masculine society, so it's hard for me to comment on that. But I can probably make a pretty good educated guess. Um, if you look at men, if you are not succeeding, you're failing. So it's this constant fight to survive in those kind of environments, especially hypermasculinity. You know, in more patriarchal societies, you know, the fight, the struggle is what's important, because if you don't, you're going to get walked over. You're going to get stepped on, walked over, beaten, killed. So the expectation to be violent is more acceptable in those kind of environments. You know, where we have a more egalitarian society here in most Western countries, we find that men do not do that as frequently. So it's, you know, we have small localized areas where violence is more prevalent. Usually it's associated with poverty, and more specifically abject poverty, because poverty itself doesn't cause crime. Abject poverty causes crime. Abject poverty meaning you have something that I need, not want. You have something I need. So if I don't have money and I don't have food, where am I going to get it from? You know, I'm going to steal it. And this is where you find the majority of crime rates are usually in poverty-stricken neighborhoods. It's no surprise. I mean, if we're not helping people feed
Yeah,
themselves, then, you know, what do you expect is going to happen? Crime rate's going to go up.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, let me take this conversation to another direction now.
Mm-hmm.
I sympathize with the plights of men, sympathize with what men are going through, but I couldn't help but notice that um, some of some of these movements that have sprung out of the men's rights activist movement, I sort of have I take issues with them, like the MGTOW movement,
Oh, hell yeah.
like the incels, like the
Yeah.
pickup artists, and the others. So because to me it seems as if it is becoming sort of an echo chamber of just bashing women, of putting all the blame on women, that women are
Yeah.
the cause of our problem. Heck, I criticize women, but I don't think I would be comfortable just going to a forum where all we talk about is, I wouldn't say I criticize women, I criticize some aspect of female behavior, and maybe some forms of feminism and all that. But I would not be comfortable going into an arena with a bunch of men where we just moan and complain about,
Yeah.
about women and all that. And especially with these new dating coaches that are springing up, you see them talking to, okay, they use terms like alpha males, beta males, and what these men need from women. And at times it's so contradictory, because at times they will tell you, what does a woman bring to the table? If the woman answers and says, oh, I can cook, I can clean, I'm beautiful, they'll think she's shallow, and they say, is that all you bring to the table? But then on the other hand, if she says, oh, I have skills, I have money, and I have this, they'll say that's not what a man needs from a woman. We just need a woman that can cook and clean. And then you ask yourself, what exactly do these guys want? So
Right.
can you comment on that and the relationship it has with the men's rights activists?
Can comment and will happily comment on that. I have no problem absolutely criticizing the absolute crap out of men's right organizations that take this approach of you know, feminism is what hurt us, and so we're going to attack all women, or you know, these MGTOW is. I wish I could use the foul language that I want to use on this, because I think that's a deplorable perspective to have. And I'll example it by this. In my personal opinion, you cannot be a men's right activist unless you are also a feminist, because the two are not connected. You're talking apples and oranges, or football and basketball. They're not the same thing. One does not have to
Mhm.
suffer because so that the other one can succeed. That
mm,
doesn't need to happen, right? So men's issues are women's issues, and women's issues are men's
yeah,
issues. We share this
exactly.
planet almost equally. I mean, even if you wanted to take out trans and non-binary people, and I say that in the sense of if you want to remove them from the equation on paper, which I don't want to do, I want to include them. You still find that approximately the human race is 50-50. It's pretty dang close, right? So we're sharing this planet with the other gender, and to assume that one must kneel for the other one to feel taller, I'll put both feminists and MRAs to task on that. I think that's absolute horse crap. Um, you know, if I can give an example, I want to stop women being sexually assaulted, and I want to do that in almost any way I possibly can. And that has nothing to do
Mm,
with the fact that men also are victims of sexual assault at young ages. The majority of
mm,
men who are child molesters were molested by other men, right? So what you have, again, we go back to this problem of society's problem is men's mental health is being ignored. Um,
mm,
you talk about pay equality. I want absolute pay equality. I won't get into that topic right now because there's a lot to unpack there, but I think we get paid fairly equally when you control for
mm,
certain variables.
mm,
Um, but that doesn't mean that we can't keep fighting for pay equality and making sure, because you don't want to just ignore it, right? Because then we risk going backwards. So this is something that we
mm,
constantly need to be attenuated to recognize is are women being treated fairly? And we need to be constantly asking that question. We need to be constantly asking that question, are men being treated fairly? Right. So if you
mm.
look at, the death rate of men in work, right? So I believe the last number was 94% of workplace deaths are men. 94%. We
Mm.
work more death jobs, meaning the jobs have a significantly higher rate of death. Um, most of the deaths in war are men. You know,
Hello, hello, Steve, you
um,
froze.
yeah, it's doing that every little once in a while. But 70% of homeless people are men. 94% of workplace deaths are men. I think it was like 97% of combat veterans or soldiers who fight in wars are men, and soldiers who die in war are men. Then you've got veteran suicide. The vast majority, the overwhelming majority of those suicides are men. Um, and so we don't have to ignore one gender so that the other gender can get help. I think that's a ridiculous false dichotomy that doesn't need to exist. I can fight for men just as much as I fight for women, and I will continue to do that. So I hope that answers
Yeah,
your question. I can go on for another
yeah,
hour complaining about men's right activism, but I think the fundamental message I would send to both men and women is that one does not have to fail for the other to succeed. We can all do this all together, and we can help men and we can help women, and we can provide an environment where we're talking about these things. We're able to help support and uplift women and men universally across the board. So I get so frustrated because I do belong to an MRA group on Reddit, and I'm disgusted by the crap I see there. I won't join MGTOW. I won't do it because it's as far as I'm concerned, MGTOW is a hate group.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah,
So I I I agree with you 100% because when I listen to these people, these men who say these things or who behave in such manner, I ask myself, I mean, we're still going to need women if society is going to function, if the human race is going to continue, we're still going to need women. So it doesn't matter how bad we think they are. We have to find a way to work out the problems. It shouldn't be. I That's why I usually don't like problems that are solutions that are gendered. You know, ch
Right.
girl child abuse. No, it's not a girl child problem. It's a human problem. It's a human child problem. You
Yeah.
understand? Let us see it from that angle. It's not that women are being oppressed. No, people are being oppressed. It's not that women are being attacked. People are being attacked. Yes, sure. These might be skewed towards along gender lines, but by
Hmm.
God, they are first of all human problems before they are any sexist problem. Because if an
Right.
alien was to come from space and look at us all, we're still going to be human to them. First of all, before this dichotomy comes in. So it doesn't make sense that you want to write off an entire gender. You want to write off half of the planet because you somehow feel aggrieved. So that's why I think that if it is not checked, it might just be a way for disaffected people who are not emotionally mature to just come together and cook up very terrible ideas, and bad things can happen from there. So I really do agree with you. So we have Chloe in the conversation right now.
Hi,
So
Chloe.
uh, Chloe,
Hey,
jump into the conversation.
you're all sexist. Joking. But it's so it's very interesting. At least like so I at least I made this point in the chat about the criminalization part and kind of differentiating it from like more so crimes of passion or versus like crimes of like feeling disaffected versus like criminal behavior of like youths, right? And I think it's more so of a like socialization type of issue, and that also could correlate to they also might not have good mental health. But I remember there was like a study, I think it was somewhere in Chicago or something like that, in which they were trying to look at the to reduce the rates of there are certain teenagers that they could predict that they would end up in the criminal justice system
Yep.
eventually,
Yeah.
right? They could see exactly like these are the guys. So what they did was they had like this program where they would take all those guys and essentially put them in like um it was interesting, like a social skills class
Yeah.
in order to change their minds as to how to socially interact and how to even mediate like disagreements. And so like one exercise was they had the boys pair up and they gave one of the boys a water bottle and they said your assignment is the guy who doesn't have the water bottle, you have to get it from the other guy. And so they had them all like essentially like go, you have 10 minutes, right? And they instantly started wrestling and they started trying to wrestle each other to get the water bottle from the other guy. And then at the end of the exercise, the instructor said, "Did you think about asking him for the water bottle? um, did you actually think about, because we never said the guy who gives it up loses, and to actually kind of think about like and is think about you know how you interact with other people and and getting out of that win lose, and especially their social economic class, as well as the environment that they grew up in. It was a very rough, violent type of neighborhoods, and so they were conditioned to always be hard, to always show dominance, to always be aggressive, to acquiesce to anyone is a sign of weakness. And so they were kind of conditioned to always kind of be confrontational, and or to try to keep what they had. And they were never in an environment in which they were kind of taught the lessons of there's another way of actually moving forward in life, and it doesn't actually make you less of a person. There are more ways to be a man or in society. And I think that that kind of lesson is actually missing from a lot of young men's lives, and they kind of go into the world with like these very black and white ideas of how they have to survive. And I see that as that. I think that is partially kind of one aspect of criminality for young men growing up, because you kind of hear things of like, I got to get what's mine. You have to take you know, instead of how to figure out how you negotiate to get what you want.
Wow, that's good. Steve, do you want to respond to that before Mr. Pilu says something? Hello, Steve.
Looks like he's frozen. Oh wait, I can see he's moving now.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah.
I don't know if
So
my internet connection keeps dropping or what.
yeah. So do you want to respond to what Chloe just said before Mr. Pilu says something?
So I think I heard everything, but I kind of dropped out twice in that. So in some ways, yeah, boys are taught to fight. Because I think going back to Charles's previous question is we've been socialized to do that over so long that what
I think you're freezing, Mr. Stevie JJ. You're freezing. We can't hear you.
Yeah, I think it has some network issues.
Okay.
I'm going to try a different
Okay, he's
internet
back.
connection. I'll be back. I'm going to try a different internet
Okay.
connection.
All right. So Mr. Pilu, go ahead.
Yeah. A matter of fact, I actually had a question for Stevie JJ. According to what he was saying before, I mean, I'm going in and out because like I just got off work and I'm traveling, so I'm in transit, so I'm listening in and out. But I remember them talking about the men are about losing power. I forgot exactly how you shot I'm trying to remember exactly how he framed it. He said that it's not that men are trying to gain power, it's that they kind of get back the power they lost, right? So that right there raises the philosophical question that how did they get the power that they're losing to begin with? If you're saying that by acting out or this, that, and the third, or doing an act of violence or whatever they're doing and acting out, right? They're trying to regain the power they lost. How did they get that power to begin with? Exactly. Yeah, there we go. That's the question.
Okay, so I think I got a good internet connection now. So
Yeah.
to answer your question, how did men get this power? Men historically, from what I understand of everything that I've read, is the reason why men retained and took that power was because they were at most risk of dying. So when you talk about Sparta, it was the men that went off to battle. You know what I mean? So, you know, every war that has ever existed was men. Part of being able to vote was you had to perform some kind of service to the country, or you had to be a property owner, which meant you were paying taxes. So a lot of these factored into it. The more responsibility you take, the more rights you get back. Now, I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying that that's how it should be. I'm actually not saying any of that. I'm just offering what information I know. And so that power, we took it. For lack of a better word, we took it. We took what we felt was ours. And I think that should be, I think as men, we need to own that. Whether that was a mistake or a benefit, we still need to own it one way or the other.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. He's from Stanley. He gave me a Discord question to add to what I just said. He said, "Hey, who did they lose it to?"
You know, I don't think it's societal based. I think it's individual based, or at least small enough that we can't say that it's everybody. So I think the answer people want me to say is feminism, but I don't think that's true. I think men were using their power and they may have given it up in order so that we could live in a society that we profess to be equal, right? We believe that all men are created equal. Well, you know, back then men was to be understood as everybody, but for a long time it wasn't. You know, for a long time society hasn't been equal responsibility, you know, as far as that was concerned. Now, that's not to say that women didn't have their fair share of massive responsibilities, you know, child rearing, cooking, cleaning, in an area or in a time where we didn't have dishwashers. you had to grind the cornmeal yourself, the wheat yourself, and that was women's responsibilities. And so we can't just say that, men had all the responsibilities. I think, we shared responsibilities. Stage one relationships were based off of having children. Can you be a good mother? Can you be a good cook, and those kind of things? Because that's what was needed to survive. You needed a partner to be able to survive in those times. And now we've came into, the Western world in the 2000s, and in the 20th century, we really made a giant leap forward into stage two relationships where we don't have to fight for our food. We don't have to grind the cornmeal. We don't have to grind the wheat. We don't have to do any of that. And so we have more time to spend on more meaningful things like reading books, going on vacations, working extra hours if we wanted to, and able to spend more time interacting with our partners. And so the need and requirement for deeper psychological connection with our partners is what kind of ushered into stage two, the stage two relationship. And for some reason, males didn't get the memo that we were supposed to change into these more emotionally available individuals. And because we focused so much on feminism, which was great, and it needs to continue that way, we left men behind. And again, that didn't come at the cost of that didn't have to come at the cost of women's rights. We could have done both of them at the same time. That's where we made the mistake. We should have pulled men into the 20th century as well.
So yeah, that makes me think of, in general, like women they've taken on more masculine traits, right? But the same hasn't happened for men on like necessarily on the same scale, right? In women going into, the workplace in general. Personally, I work in a male-dominated field, and you have to adapt. It's to that different dynamic, and it's because traditionally the women's sphere, like the female sphere, has been in the home. There hasn't been as much opportunity for men to have to be in that that space and then have to adapt to a woman's dominated space. It's very it's that in that sense it's it's asymmetric, right? And I remember reading something about it was a critique on industrialization, and it was when both men and women would work together on the farm. They work together in the home to do all of these things. And then when men started going out and working outside of the home and in the cities, there was someone who was worried that men would not have a place in the home anymore, that he would be late getting home to lead prayer for dinner and all that kind of stuff, that he would slowly start being removed from the home. And what I've seen is men have been more and more abstracted from the home, where I've seen men complain about, they're just an ATM for their family. They don't actually feel like they want them in the family, is that they're just providing that basic input. And I think it's a symptom of men moving further and further away outside of the home. And I think that there needs to be more to allow men to go into the home more. So like I've the men that I've worked with, and at least the companies that I've worked with, they actually have quite progressive like parental leave, right? There was a guy who the birth of his daughter, he was like hoping that it's like, I hope that she's born in after the end of the year, because the company started this policy where they extended parental leave to 3 months. Yeah. Right. And so he could be home with his daughter. And also they have flexible time in which, you can work, 410s in which, you work 4 days a week, 10 hours a day, or, 980s in which every other weekend or every other Friday, you can spend time with your family, or like flex time. Right. And I've seen that be very, very beneficial to men, because they can actually prioritize their families. They love, that benefit. And I think that should actually be something that is pushed by men's rights in order to, men need flexible time with their family. It's not just for women.
Absolutely. Let me comment on that really quick because I think you brought up a really amazing point, as always, because Chloe's always dropping bombs on us. But a study was done, a poll was done, not a study, but a poll of men, and 43% of men said they would be happy to change positions and stay home and take care of the kids, as long as the bills were paid. You know, I was discussing earlier why men are opting out of marriage and dating, and it's like, well, what's the incentive? You know, because the incentive right now is get married, and with I think the divorce rate right now is actually peaking at around 75%. So 75% of marriages are expected to fail. So not only am I going to have to pay child support, I'm also going to have to pay alimony, and I'm going to be paying for a house that I don't even live in. Where's the incentive? You know what I mean? And, you know, I myself at one point in time was paying $700 a month in child support. And I never missed a payment. And so that really affected the way in which I was able to live and provide a home for my children when they were there. Eventually, I was, my oldest son's mom was like, this is a lot of money and it's probably too much, because she had a really great husband and he was having to pay like $1,000 a month for one kid. And, I think they talked about it amongst themselves and she offered to lower it down to 300. So at the time I was only paying 500. And then it went back down to a total of 3 when my oldest daughter got old enough where I didn't have to pay. But, and there's a whole lot of stuff in there that I'm not explaining. I'm just giving you a kind of a general idea of what a man's going to be doing. And, even in some cases, like I believe it's the state of California, your wife can have access to your retirement or your pension. The movie Serpico was about a guy. I'm not going to get into the plot of the movie, but anyways, he's a real guy. And he actually got married and his wife still had access to his pension, I believe, even after he died, his ex-wife. So, I mean, there's very little incentive, not to mention, in most states, men don't have really a great history in being able to win custody cases, and luckily enough, I live in a state where it's becoming more male friendly. Parental alienation is recognized in my state, and that's a big deal. And so, they've done studies and numerous studies, and you can research this if you'd like, but we found that 50-50 custody is the best available choice for children when the parents can no longer stay together. The best scenario is that they stay together, but I'm not going to advocate staying with someone that you don't want to be with. So the only alternative is a divorce. But after that, 50-50 custody has been found to be the most helpful for raising healthy children. Anytime a father is in a child's life, there's statistics of being successful, staying out of jail, not being as likely to do drugs. Every single one of those metrics goes way up higher. The children tend to not do drugs. They tend to not go to jail. They tend to not have children out of wedlock. They have, they have, in every metric, they do better. At this point, it's undisputable that, the work's been done.
All right. So we have Bo in the house. Bo, welcome. We've missed you. Welcome to the conversation. So jump right in.
No, I was really just listening, seeing the perspective. I don't really have I think in some regards with custody issues and maybe there's some validity to it or a need for it. But I think it's something more so like because he made a comment about after the divorce and the incentive for marriage. Like, I do think, like, in regards to that, in men's rights or whatever, some people get the other end of the stick, right? But what would you say would be the alternative? You say there isn't an incentive, so like starting the family as far as establishing the family. So we know the statistics for, single parent children being born into the world. So what's the alternative for men that don't want to get married? Or what other option do they have, rather, so to speak? What other option do they have where they don't want to get married, but, as a man, your position in this world is to start a family and raise a child. So how do you see that?
That's a complicated question because I don't want to speak for all men. But my oldest son, who we're going to be starting a podcast together here pretty shortly called Generations, where we take two different perspectives, one from the youth of today and one from, the old people like me. And we investigate society and we give critiques on what's going on in current events and how we feel about certain things. But we had a discussion and he's just like, I don't want to get, I want to get married, but I don't want to get married because I know what's probably going to happen. And so a lot of these guys, they end up playing video games. Some of them become incels. They remove themselves from society generally, and that's never good for anybody, right? If anything, we need more men in society doing a better job at uplifting other men and women, and ensuring that everybody has an equal voice and represented equally. Some men, they decide to go to school, they try to self-improve. Any number of things can happen. So I don't want to diminish it into just, all men, but I get where you're going with that, but I don't know exactly how to answer it any better than that.
Do you feel like, because you do have, like, in the men activism space, a lot of older men that's had negative experiences in marriage or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that's affect, or how do you see that, like, as it affect, like, younger men looking up and some of them having, like, you can say irrational fears because, or the possibility of having these irrational fears that's leading them to be incels and staying away from women, or having these feelings, though, if I get married, it's going to ruin my life?
I'm not sure there's enough incentive right now. Like, I go back to my son's response and it was, why? What's the point? I'm going to get screwed if I try to do it, and, something that he said to me really kind of hit me in the heart a little bit was he's like, Dad, everywhere I go, I'm a cis white het racist male, sexist and all these other things. And I get called all these names constantly everywhere I go. I mean, why would I want to live in that society? And I didn't know how to answer him other than to make the world a better place.
But how much of that is the internet and just this whole, like, coming up in the era of the internet?
Okay.
For a kid. Because I mean, like, I'm pretty sure, like, when you was growing up, or just the average person was probably disconnected from the internet. There's
Right.
not that. So it's like sometimes when you hear people talk, you could tell by the information they're ingesting from the internet, or what circles of the internet they find themselves in, where they may have those insecurities or feel like that.
Yeah, it modifies their view of what reality can be.
Right. Where the world is consistently and predominantly more digital every day, that has real-time effects on younger people. And it's not like back in the day where, I'm 44 years old and, we hung outside, we did things, we went to parties, we hung out with people physically a lot. A lot of the times men didn't get into fights back then because we didn't want to. I think every man can at least in some way identify with this problem, which is, when men go out into the world and we're with other men, we watch what we say because, at any point in time, that dude that you just pissed off is going to punch you in the face. right? So there's always this overlooming threat of being put in our place by violence, and that taught us to socialize better. We had to think about our words better, and we had to formulate thoughts better and more accurately. And we couldn't just walk around mouthing off to people. But now you have such a disconnect with digital media, and this kind of an environment where we're all talking, we're not in the same room. Of course you can act like a big guy.
Well,
when you go out into the public, you're a completely different person.
Well, there is also the fact on social media, it heavily favors and prioritizes female way of communicating, right? And kind of going to pointing at something Jordan Peterson said, when they look at aggression in men and women, male and females, is actually kind of the same. It's just that when women are aggressive, it's reputation destruction, right?
Right.
And that's the medium online in which we dominate, essentially, and men kind of have to catch up to that type of mode of communication.
Well,
but
what do you mean by that?
Well, like you said, your son was saying, everywhere I'm seeing all this shit talk about me, my gender, my sex, my race. That's reputation destruction. That's what women do a lot. And if you look at a lot of the types of people who are making those types of criticism, they're female.
Right. But you said that we need to catch up. So the only reason why I'm focused on that is I don't think that you mean that we need to catch up to the race where we need to be doing the same things.
Yeah. I mean like emotional intelligence in terms of communicating. That's what I mean.
Right. So I absolutely 100% agree, because I think from my experience, men don't express themselves very well. We kind of have, I think we were taught to, and pardon my language, but I can't think of any better way to say it. But, we've been taught from such a young age that there's two modes of being for men: fight it or fuck it. And we weren't taught to socialize as human beings. We were taught to be brutish, beasts of burden and hell and war. That's what we've been predominantly all of human history. And so if we're going to bring men into the 20th century, the 21st century, we've got to change the way that we learn how to talk. We've got to be able to think about what we're saying and be able to describe our emotions and our feelings, and not feel like we're going to be put down for being able to cry. One of the hardest things that I've been trying to learn how to do is to be able to retain my masculinity, but yet cry when I need to. That's one of the hardest things that I've been really, really struggling with, because, I've been through a lot of shit in my life, and a lot of them I'm not dealing with in healthy ways. And I need to cry, man. I need to cry. I need to do it, but I can't.
Yeah. Well,
so it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, for that, at least I know that a limitation in that would be testosterone. Unfortunately, right? Because I actually listen to people who are detransitioners, like women who have transitioned to, like, at one point they identified as trans male, like they're trans men, right? And then they detransitioned, and so they stopped taking testosterone. And one of the big changes that they said that they could do again after they stopped taking the testosterone was to cry.
I don't know enough about that, so I don't want to comment on that. But I'm not going to say you're right or wrong, but maybe that's something that we need to investigate a little bit more.
Hey, Kevin.
Go ahead, Bo. Bo wanted to say something before we welcome.
No, I just wanted to say back to the point about like the internet and young kids, like you were saying, like your son growing up in the age of the internet and telling you all these fears he have of being a heterosexual man and a woman. How much of that though, like if you look at the rise of stuff like the manosphere and red pill content, where essentially if you look at it, it's a lot of older men that's had bad experiences in relationship congregating on one side, and young men that haven't even stepped out into the dating scene like that, or they might just early be stepping out there, but they don't really have that the experiences, but they're ingesting these other they're ingesting information from older dudes that's had bad experiences, and it's shaping the way they see relationships. You know what I mean?
I got you.
Almost in a way, whereas, so like when your son tell you these things about like feel like, I mean, his fears, I mean, that's almost something that can be corrected by just stepping out into the world. You know what I mean? Just walking around the mall, you know what I mean? Just talking to women, and you know what I mean? Because, or just having examples of other couples that's had successful relationships and seeing that into action, and you know what I mean?
It points to a lack of community, right? You know, and again, it's the socialization. You know, I think, you know, men who are raised in, like, you know, as boys who are raised in a community, you know, they have friends growing up, you know, they can talk to a priest or whatever, they can talk to their dads, and also then they socialize with women, and they seem a lot more well adjusted than people who are kind of atomized and just kind of feel like they're alone out there, kind of going out there in the world. But I think I want to go to a conversation that Bo and I actually had on the Discord probably a while ago, and I think what he's pointing to in terms of the manosphere and the red pill community is like, so there's like that whole fiasco with like the Fresh and Fit podcast, in which it was, I mean, I was kind of watching popcorn, watching that whole,
I love Evan Preach.
but yeah, so like there's, I think, like, you know, I had just happened to catch one of their podcasts, and it's like, okay, yeah, there's, you know, they're technically right, but I noticed like the quality of women, obviously everyone points it out, it's like, these are really dumb women, right? They are not representative of any like normal woman. They are women who are in Miami, who are Instagram models, that they literally pick them up at a club. And so by trying to point to them, saying like, this is like, you don't want to be with women, look at them, and it's like you're literally picking, like, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of like actual quality, right? They're just all flash and no bang, right? And so I just think it's like there's also like a weird thing of where they're misrepresenting like what a normal person is and what like even a normal woman is, right? It just skews the image, because again, you know, it seems like sometimes these guys, they want the Instagram model, but they don't realize, you know, you're also picking all of the vain qualities that do make her so beautiful, right? She's emphasizing her body in a way that, let's say if she was more modest, or she had other qualities that she also emphasized, so she's not just looking for attention for her body, even if she looks the exact same, she would, or like, you know, physically, like in terms of fitness, she wouldn't look the same. She wouldn't try to, try to get people to, she wouldn't look in a way to get people to access her OnlyFans, to pay for her OnlyFans. It literally just completely transforms how she's getting your attention. And actual normal women aren't going to get their attention. They're programmed for their minds to only acknowledge these types of women as women, and like just pay attention to those. And I see that in terms of the internet is completely skewing all of these relationships.
Well, I think
basically, like they say, you get what you paid for, or you get what you asked for. So you're gonna have those problems from those type of women.
Exactly.
So I don't want to, you know, again, I don't want to lump a group of people into, you know, an easily identifiable and you know, I just don't want to put people in that label. But, you know, to say that you have some degree of accuracy in that, and I'll trust your opinion as a woman, that what you are viewing is accurate. And so if we take that example, right, are we socializing men because of the amount of social media and what is important to men nowadays, right? Just, you know, what's important, and it's the Instagram model. Like, we're told that that's what we want. No, we want someone who is beautiful and will listen to us. You know, it's not. I don't think that changes due to age. I think you're just the older you get, the more connected you get to that mindset, where it's more important about how you are treated than it is what your spouse looks like. Obviously, physical attraction matters, absolutely. But the time that I'm most attracted to my wife, and I mean, my wife's hot, she's absolutely drop dead gorgeous, but there's so much more inside for me to explore than there is in the outside. Because I can look at her, I know where every crease is, I know where every, I know her body really well. She's my wife. But it's the internal part that really connected with me, and why I wanted to marry her was because the way that she treats me, the way that she listens to me, the way that she comforts me, supports me. We went shopping today, and she was like, it was a team effort. We have this joke because both of our last names end with J, so we've been Team JJ forever. And as a matter of fact, I actually took my wife's last name, so the JJ is part my last name and part her last name, because I believe that when you're going to join with a family, you got to join with the family. And women, I mean, the traditional sense, women have always they've had to change their name on their social media, their social security cards, their driver's license. Like, you have no idea. Maybe you do, but most men don't have any idea how hard it is to change your name on every single piece of paper that you own that identifies you as a person. Right. And so, I walk the walk in the way in which, everything that I'm talking about here, I'm going to do myself. So if my wife is going to have to change her last name, so am I, but there's so much more in there than just what I can see on the surface as a human being. And when, Fresh and Fit bring on these women that are incredibly attractive, I haven't seen a conventionally unattractive woman on there, but, I don't want to dismiss their intelligence, because I've seen a couple on there that were like, they were legit intelligent. Like, they had it together. They knew their shit. And then there were some that I was just not impressed with. But you get what you are attracted to. You get whatever you're fishing for, you're going to get. So if you're fishing for super attractive, but, low intelligence, that's what you're going to get. Now you take Abba and Preach, they go for intelligent, beautiful women. I wanted a woman that I could contend with, right? I wanted a woman that we could have,
how do you come to that conclusion, though?
Say what?
How do you come to that conclusion? Like, what would lead you to believe that Abba and Preach goes for intelligent, beautiful women? Like, because
they pointed it out in several of their videos. I've been following them for probably about 2 years now, and they really highlight intelligent women frequently. And they often highlight in a negative sense, ignorant women.
Well, I think Chloe's point, though, to what Chloe was saying that people like that get popularity and gain a following, and young men develop, because she said young men develop their idea of a woman in relationships by watching these type of shows.
Yeah.
Where they bring on women that are beautiful, that they purposely find that have nothing really to talk about, where they can almost like make a mockery of them, right? So that young kids will start thinking like, oh, look, women think this. Or they say, if I don't have this, then they can't get with me. Or they only want a man that makes 6 figures, to like reinforce certain negative stereotypes about women. You know what I mean? I think that's more so to the point she was trying to point out, and how that's affecting young men coming up now and their ideas of women and how they view approaching marriage and different things of that nature, because they're watching these different people within the manosphere that's like reinforcing these negative stereotypes of women and giving young men like these irrational fears about getting with women, or thinking they know how women to behave based on what these content creators in the manosphere or whatever are putting out there.
Right. I'm glad that you said that, because I was just about ready to get to that. And my response to that is that we men need to change the conversation, and we need to stop paying attention to these people like Fresh and Fit who just view women as objects. I mean, personally, I find it a disgusting and disgraceful kind of behavior, because weak men are afraid of strong women. You know, they don't want smart, intelligent women on their show. I do. I want smart, intelligent women on my show. I want a woman to intellectually beat me to death. You know, I want to be challenged. I don't want to always be told I'm right. And so I think it's up to men to start changing the way that we view the conversations that we're having, and start changing the value that we place on relationships where it should be, and that is treating people like human beings.
All right, Kevin, hop into the conversation. Welcome, Kevin.
I don't know if he knows he's on. There we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. No, man. I was just sitting here and enjoying the conversation.
Okay, so do you want to add anything to what's been said so far?
Oh, not yet. Soon enough, though.
Okay. It's all right. So so let me try and condense what I think I understood by Chloe and Bo's points of views, which is um the sort of content that these young men are getting are not an accurate representation of what relationships with women or what real women are. So
Yeah.
they're getting these information they're getting on the manosphere or online is skewing for very stereotypical negative aspects of relationships and of women. So many of these young men may not know, because they've had very little experience with women. They just think that, okay, this is the way relationships are, and it's easy to just start getting bitter from there, and start saying things about women when you probably just had one rejection in your life, and you feel that this is a confirmation of what you went through, and that these women are evil and they're out to get you. All they want is your money and all that. So they don't even bother trying in the first place. And then to Bo's point was that um, the problem is not that these young men, or part of the problem is not that these young men feel they are being demonized, is that they are being radicalized by older men who had disaffected relationships, who had wives who took them for everything they had. So they set up these platforms to
Yeah.
be a father figure to young men who don't know any better, and they're not giving them a well-rounded information. It's not well fleshed out.
So can I push back on that?
Okay, please do. Go ahead.
It's not difficult to go online. You can go on, you know, make a Facebook page. Don't put a picture of yourself on there. Don't put an age. Or you can even lie about your age and say that you're 18 or 19, or you can say that you're 65. Right? You can go into certain atmospheres on the internet and get completely blasted for being a white cis male who's sexist and racist. It's not difficult to understand that can happen. Right. So, definitely part of, grumpy old men syndrome could definitely be a part of it. But my 18-year-old son isn't hanging out with me every day. Right. He doesn't have any access. I've never talked trash about their mothers ever, and I won't. As a matter of fact, I support them. And I mean, hell, I even let my second wife live with me and my current wife twice. Right. Find me an ex-husband that'll do that. But I'm plenty bitter at my first wife, but I've never discussed it in front of my kids. Not ever. And even so, my kids don't have that big of an access to my feelings on current affairs. I don't talk to them about current affairs. I'm going to shortly here with my oldest son with our podcast. But aside from that, so I want to rail against that a little bit, because I've seen the vitriol online. I've been a victim of it several times. And so the idea that they're going to go out there and only, or majoritively, get that experience from grumpier old men, I think it's easier to make an argument that they're just going to go out there into certain pages and certain environments where they're going to get it naturally anyways.
So I think that there's kind of there should be a slight distinction from the attitude of, I don't think I want to get married, or I don't know how to find a woman, or like, I think especially for young guys, they don't really know haven't really learned how to look that far ahead in the future. And of course, now with, men going to college at, lower and lower rates, and kind of, there's might be more of a uncertainty as to what they're going to do in the future. That's part of, that's a very important part of like finding a partner, because you have to find a partner that's going to be compatible with your future. And if you have an uncertain future, you can't really find a partner that's going to fit with you going forward. But I think what Charles is talking about is, in terms of relationships and how to view women. And if you want to pursue a relationship, and that maybe some of these older guys are kind of spoiling the pot, but you do have a valid point that, excuse me, just in a general sense, cis white het guys do just get shit on indiscriminately, irregardless of, I mean, maybe if they, toe the line and say all these things that they don't disagree, and they might be accepted, or they just might have to tolerate some language, but they won't be directly attacked. But if they actually stand up for themselves, yes, they will be attacked in many of these spaces.
Absolutely. Look no further than the ASU incident.
Okay. Okay. Now, this brings me to my next question. So, how prevalent is this? There's usually this statement that Twitter is not the real world, and I could say the same thing for social media is not the real world. Now, how prevalent is this this sort of shitting on men in the real world? Are we not sort of transplanting things that's happening in the social media space to the real world, and exaggerating its effect in the real world? Is that not a possibility?
I don't believe so. And the reason for that is there is a list of 12 defenses that women can use in court, but men cannot. The overwhelming abundance of women winning in court cases, both in custody and in criminal court, is vastly different. Women are sentenced 63% less time than men are on average, meaning women serve much less time than men do for the same crimes. So it's pretty consistent when you look out into the world and you are a part of that. You start witnessing environments where men aren't getting a break; they're not getting a cut. You know what I mean? We're definitely getting the harshest punishments for a lot of different things, and that can manifest in several different ways. One of which is when a man pipes up. Oftentimes, the reply is very vitriolic, and it's very centered on their gender and their skin color. Unless you agree with what the majority are saying. And so we've bred this environment that is, quite frankly, toxic to men, and men are victims of it, and men are perpetrators of it. So I don't want to put this all on women. It's not all it's not just their fault. Men are doing this garbage too. Well, we're harming men ourselves.
I think that kind of goes to your point of where in the past men had a greater responsibility, right? And they did. So, I think when there's a failing, the punishment is much harsher. But I don't think the courts have caught up to the fact of the men's responsibility, or at least, their connection to the community and all that kind of stuff has been eaten away at.
Can I make a point?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I think when it comes down to the justice system, right? I think I was having a conversation like this with my brother the other day, and he definitely did vent some of the concern that Stevie JJ is just expressing here. But what I do think happen is sometimes there's this overcorrecting of historical injustice, and we can see that in the criminal justice system where women tend to be treated more favorably when compared to men because of past social injustice that the justice system deemed that were done to women. But I do think if we look on a larger structural, I think we cannot say that women and men are represented equally, because in many aspects of today's society, women are still getting the back end of many stick. So I think it's not a good generalization to say that women have it easier when it compared to men, because in many cases, I think the opposite is true. But I do think in the justice system, where, as I explained, it is overcorrecting. So, women, because I saw a lot of the studies that Stevie J was pointing to. I've read them, where men are 6 times more likely to be sentenced for the same crimes that a woman does. So I get your concern, but I do think if we look on a macroscopic level, woman does still get a. We haven't reached that equality yet that people points to.
So, I definitely take that criticism, and I definitely accept it. But I'll add a couple more onto there. There's some things that men are incapable of committing that are specific to women. For one thing is a woman knows when she's pregnant generally, right? Your belly's going to grow, you get morning sickness and all this other stuff. If you sleep with a guy once, you didn't get his name, he has no idea that he's got a child out there. You're the only one that knows, right? Other examples are, there was a case not too long ago about a woman who essentially raped a younger boy. I think it was 13 or 14, maybe even 15. Well, she got pregnant by him and then sued him for custody. Like, I find that disgusting. Like, that's not uncommon. It's not as uncommon as people think it is. So that is something that specifically men are victims of, because we don't have any choice in it oftentimes. So, there's definitely, and that's not to say that women don't have to suffer from other things too that men perform on them. I mean, the argument that I'm making is that there's areas where men are victims simply because they're men, and we need to pay attention to that.
I do think that also exists, that women are also victim in certain spaces simply because they're women.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm not going to deny that. No, you are absolutely 100% right.
Yeah, so that goes to my larger point. I think sometime, because I think when it comes down to the men right activists, right, I think why people are not taking them seriously at times, it sounds reactionary. I do think so to a certain extent. We are fetishizing something that happened in the past. In the past, a lot of time people will cite, hey, divorce rate was very low and those stuff. We are so obsessed with the past sometimes, and sometimes people feel that these people want to bring them back too much in the past, and sometimes people just overtly and just reject everything that the men right activist is saying, without even addressing some of the legitimate concerns that they have. Some concerns that they have are very legitimate, but I do think sometimes because I watch sometimes the Jubilee videos. I do think sometimes some of the concern that they have is, what do I say, reactionary. And I do think that's the issue. The discourse sometimes is very poison, and therefore we have people oscillating between the two extremes, and sometimes people is not taking in the nuance or sometimes the center point of view.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you. You're absolutely right. For example, the belief that what men do doesn't affect women, and that women do doesn't affect men which is essentially explains those people who take the extreme sides of the argument between men's rights and feminism, is completely false. It's a fallacy, right? The struggles that both men and women fight for and fight with, both genders would benefit from. We benefit from supporting each other.
Mm-hmm.
I want to live in a world where a woman doesn't have to be afraid of walking down the street. I want a world where a woman doesn't have to be afraid of asking a guy for a ride home because it's raining outside, and the risk of harm might do more if she was walking. I want to live in a world where women don't have to fear men, and I want to live in a world where men don't have to fear other men. Like that's my end goal, and that's why I say that you can't be a men's rights activist without being a feminist. You just can't.
That is true. I think so. Correct.
All right. So this is an hour, 30 minutes. I think this will be a very good place to end the conversation for today. We're going to do another one related to this, maybe with another topic, but related to this. I think this is one of this has been one of the very this was really good, really good.
Can I say one more
Steve,
thing real quick, Charles?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, this is more of a message to, to women, men's right activists who are decent human beings. They don't want you to suffer. We want you to succeed in everything that you're doing. And this kind of goes to my fundamental, modus operandi of existing within a men's world, within men's rights activism. I want to fight for your rights and your equality and your safety just as much as I want to fight for mine. And so sometimes, this belief that men's right activists are sexist, horrible pigs that don't want anything but the destruction of women. It's not true. There's plenty of men out there that don't agree with how MG Toe is behaving, how other men's right activists are behaving. There's a lot of men out there, and unless you talk to them and you start maybe thinking about the ways that we can support each other and changing the way that conversations happen, this is going to be a constant struggle. It's going to be a constant fight. And unless we start working together, nothing's going to change. And so I would offer this is if you were offended by anything that I said today, or if you find any falsities in the information that I've given, meaning maybe I misquoted a statement or a study or a poll, please list it below in the comments. And if I can read them, I'll definitely own up to my mistakes and correct my behavior. So thank you.
Okay, I have a question. Do Americans always have to say things with disclaimers? Does it always
Nowadays
have
we
to
do.
be
Nowadays we do.
Yeah, some days we do, some days we don't. But I'm trying to be I'm trying to be generous, and I'm trying to be kind, and I'm trying to be supportive, because I realize that some women might watch this and be like, holy crap, men are still sexist, or men have this problem of misrepresenting the facts. It's not my intent to misrepresent facts. I go based off of what I've read, what I've studies that I've looked at. And so, I came into this discussion with good faith and good intent to maybe change the minds of some people out there that believe that men are just solely out there to hurt, and we're not. We want a better world for everybody. And if that means holding women up higher, and holding men up higher on the average mean, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and support everybody. That's my goal.
Thank you very much, Steve. So Kevin, last words from you before Chloe, and then Steve.
I'll go first because I have to run. I think if we look on the 1970s come up, I think somebody was pointing it out, is how much the definition of a woman has changed with all of these movement, with all of these social development. The definition of a woman has really changed. But when people think about it to a certain extent, the definition of man has been very rigid, hasn't changed that much. A man is expected to do this, man is expected to do this, man is expected to do this. When it comes on to a woman, a lot of stuff that a woman has fought for, society is now being accumulated to it. And I think that's sometime is when we have some of these men's rights activists is they are being forced to rethink or redefine what manhood is or what masculinity is. And sometimes I think they think the solution to some of the issues, hey, we need to go back to the past. In the past, it was like this. And therefore, I think sometimes that turn off, as I said, alluded to earlier, and a lot of people. But I do think that Steve J here has been very, very reasonable. And a lot of the points that he's made is very, I just wish sometime your voice was elevated more into this conversation, because when I listen to men right activists, it's some insult people who really hates women when I have to come away with the conclusion. Like, but you've been very reasonable here, man, and I really enjoyed being here. And as Charles, as always good being here. Chloe, I always like hearing your voice. And I have to run now, guys, so take care.
Bye,
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah. So Chloe.
I, for one, am quite offended. Is it because I'm a second class citizen that I'm speaking second? I'm joking. Of course, I have to say that. Because like someone's gonna like clip that and then be like, oh, she's a misandrist or something. It's always the clips. But yeah, I think this has been a productive conversation, and there's like, this is what I've noticed. I never like actually directly identified as a feminist, but I always notice if like, I would literally read something from like a men's rights activist, like, or something like, and I would like agree to everything that they were saying. I'm like, yeah, that's right. And then they get to the end and we're like, and this is why fucking feminists, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, God dang it. Like, you could have agreed. Like, but they just kind of like, really screwed the landing. So I think, yeah, we need to come together and we have more in common than than is what is dissimilar, and we can kind of work through all these issues together. And just like we got maternity leave, we like, it's very easy, just paternity leave too, or just make it gender neutral. Like, that's something that everyone should have a right to. And we need to elevate the humanity in everyone and how they have these wants and needs and deserve to be heard equally.
Absolutely. And to speak to that really quick, Charles, and then I'll shut up. I promise. It's a bad habit that men do, and I've noticed this, and I've tried to support my wife and other women. Men have a habit of talking over women way too much, and they have a habit of being so loud that women don't feel like they can have a voice. So my challenge to men is to stand up for women and their voices, let them speak, give them environments in which they can voice their opinions, and support them when they do. And don't let other men talk over women. Like, that's gross. Don't do it. Support them, let them speak. And when someone does that, speak out against it. Make people aware that they just spoke over your girl or some other girl or your wife. Don't let that shit slide. That's not cool. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you as usual. Thank you everyone for coming. Vincent, it's been a really, really long time. I appreciate you coming. Bo, pleasure having you. Kevin, pleasure having you. Dr. Mason, as usual, pleasure having you too. So, Steve, do you have any final parting words, or should we just end it here?
Well, my final words is, we need to start working together and making everybody's life better. The 20th century was the women's movement. We did so many remarkable things, both men and women. There's still a lot that we need to do for women, but there's still a lot that we need to do for men. We need to bring them into the 20th century. If you want to stop all these violent men and stop the violence that are happening to women, we need to start with men. We need to get men the mental help that they need. We need to have support groups. We need to have environments where men can speak freely and comfortably, and where we can identify with other men in a safe environment. Men, stop teasing other men about crying. Stop giving other men a hard time about, being stressed out. We got to stop some really, really toxic behavior that both genders are placing on both genders. I mean, we're just really super toxic right now, and I really want to change that. And that's my goal, is to bring people together for conversations where they can have conversations like this, and men can feel heard and women can feel heard, and everybody's walking out of that room wanting to support the other one for being respectful and kind and courteous. And so let's just try and change the way that we talk to each other. And I have a good faith that we'll do it.
Thank you, Steve. So I'll just add that men need women and women need men. We're all humans, and we just have to find a way to make it work. There are going to be problems. There are going to be challenges. There are going to be tensions, but we have to find a way to make it work, and then we can make it work. So thank you guys for coming. Like, share, subscribe, join the conversation whenever we go live. So until next time, guys, have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, Chloe. Thanks, Charles.
Bye.
Yeah.